I will never forget the survival instincts present in that little girl's eyes. What is a subtle sign that someone has had a difficult life? The 1,000-yard stare. I was in my 20s, out at a bar with my friends. I was relaxed and happy, or so I thought. And then a friend told me, "You know, whenever I see you, you always look so tense and super aware of your surroundings, like you're always vigilant and ready to run away." I was shocked. I was having a good day. It took me 10 more years and a total mental breakdown to learn that I have CPTSD and that hypervigilance is one of its possible symptoms. That's why my muscles are always sore. I had tension headaches, and trying any relaxation technique is like physical torture, and while attempting meditation, I start crying ugly tears even if I don't feel emotional. I'm still working on it and I'm about to start body-focused therapy. In my experience, a lot of people I've been around have poked fun at their trauma without necessarily realizing they didn't actually tell me or people around them about it until after the joke happened and nobody necessarily reacted. I've even done this a couple times myself. This has definitely created some awkward situations. There's nothing more embarrassing than telling a story you think is funny and getting "oh my god, I'm so sorry" instead of laughs. Not wanting to bring up anything from their past. I am willing to share past negative experiences with people to let them know you can survive messed up situations and it's okay to talk about it and try to work through it. My dad was an alcoholic. My parents were abusive towards each other. I see signs in other people's lives and try to be there for them and let them know there is nothing to be ashamed of when it comes to seeking help or support. But there are darker parts of my childhood I don't even talk to my husband about. There are some experiences better left in a box and not opened. Especially when you don't know how people might react to it or if they will see you as different once you open that box.
Somebody replied,
I can count on 2 hands the number of good memories I had with my family growing up. Eventually I moved away and quickly learned that if I brought up my past, people would immediately feel sorry for me. I got so sick of people picking apart my past to find a way of understanding who I am today. I'm a very social and friendly person that has made a life I am truly proud of. I got so annoyed that I just stopped bringing anything up unless someone explicitly asked. At one point I built up a fun community of friends living in a small apartment complex in California, US. Before I moved to the East Coast, we all still keep in touch frequently. After 3 years of spending almost every weekend with my group of friends, one of them looked at me and said, "Hey man. I just realized that I don't know anything about you or where you came from. Do you have a family? Siblings? I assumed you were from this state, but are you even from this state?" Now, I'm sure most people would think, sounds like some pretty awful friends, but I assure you they are the most supportive people I have ever met in my life. I just figured that if I wasn't asked, I wouldn't bring it up. And I'm the kind of person that can keep a person talking about themselves for hours. I genuinely enjoy other people's stories more than my own, so I never gave them the opening to ask. If they did, I would wave the question away like Barney in How I Met Your Mother, "Please," and then move the conversation along so smoothly that they forgot they even asked the question in the first place. Long story short, yes, when you go through enough trauma, you learn to keep a lid on your past. My friends all know my history now, but I don't see much of a reason to share if it doesn't relate to the conversation at hand. They handle unexpected events with maturity. In my experience, this is true of people who have been through some tough experiences with good support structures. Very often people that have been through some tough experiences handle unexpected negative events very poorly, or, worse, utterly passively. The latter might be mistaken for calm maturity but is often more akin to a learned helplessness response. A lot of people who have been through horrible things fall to pieces at things that objectively are not a big deal, either because they never learn to emotionally regulate or because things that are not a big deal to other people have actually been dangerous to them. A classic example would be someone who cannot handle others being even mildly frustrated with them, because they have had experiences where that has been the prelude to violence. Empathy. Most people cannot imagine themselves in your shoes until they are there. If they are particularly understanding, it is because they have been through the same situation and can empathize with you. If they pay close attention to the expressions of people around them and are always on the lookout for someone getting angry or upset, that is a surefire sign that they were abused at some point. This is because it is a defense mechanism that they learn to try and head off upcoming blow-ups. Lack of emotional response, whether that be happy or angry. It's like they're always in neutral. I feel this deeply. About 3 months ago, I was out with my friends and we went to a bar with a jukebox that had my favorite music on it. As I played those songs, I was really happy and my friends kept commenting on how happy I looked. I found that pretty strange, but I didn't give it much thought as I really was happy in that moment. It didn't even hit me at first, but I realized everything as I got home. That was the first time they actually saw me react to something. That's why they made it a major topic of discussion. When nothing shocks them anymore. I had a near-death experience and it put in perspective what actually mattered to me in my life and what didn't. I used to be easily embarrassed by a lot of things and worry about what people thought about me. But embarrassment means that someone has seen or heard something about you that you didn't want them to, and that will spread into people's opinion in the future. Thing is, if you're dead, you don't have a future. So at that moment I thought to myself how stupid I was to care about those things. I wished I had spent that time and energy on the people I love or the things I wanted to do instead. After that experience, though I have a future now, I find it pretty hard to be embarrassed by most things. And if I do feel it, no way in hell would I let it stop me from doing what I need to for the people I love or myself. Ironically, after gaining that mentality, people started asking me how I could be so confident sometimes. But it's not that I'm confident. I just have things more important to me than being worried about embarrassment. Preparation is key for most people who have dealt with horrendous situations. By preparing for the worst, they are often able to handle anything that comes their way. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. You only have to fall down the ladder and hit every rung on the way down to learn that lesson. I went from financially stable to bankrupt over a 3-year period thanks to 2 double lung collapses and a car wreck that shattered my hip and put me $150,000 in debt in less than 3 years in my early 20s. I'm almost 40 now. Things like that scars you for life in more ways than one. Disproportionate reactions. Their reactions to most things are normal or even low-key, but occasionally they have a huge response to something minor. We're so used to any reaction resulting in more pain that we push it down and bottle it up, so our reaction to things is minimal. Then finally that one thing happens that's an inch too far and you physically can't push it down anymore, and all that stifled emotion comes out at once over something trivial. The first part is not wanting to set someone off. In tandem with this, most underreact because any expressions of unhappiness or anything that can be perceived as negative usually gets taken as an invitation to be unloaded upon or to have someone upset displace their anger, and then you end up the target of a tirade. A lot of people, myself included, over-explain things because it's a defense mechanism in anticipation of being yelled at or being very harshly criticized because the other person tries to pin the blame on you, even for things out of your control, which is why one over-explains. A finely tuned radar for others' emotions. Not just in faces. In footsteps, posture, voices, eyes, hands. If my mom came home and shut the door a certain way, I went outside to play. If I was in my room and heard her come up the stairs a certain way, I knew I should just take the smack and apologize. For what? Who knows? But anticipation provides time to flee or diffuse conflict. Never asking for anything, even the bare minimum. Apologizing for things that aren't their fault, even in the slightest. Never talking about their issues seriously, probably joking about it or even staying away from the topic completely. Flinching at small things. When I was younger, I went shopping with my cousins. My uncle told us we could get whatever we want, so my cousins excitedly went around the store looking at whatever items there were. I literally didn't know what to do, and only got one inexpensive thing after my uncle had to constantly reassure me that it's okay if I pick out a few things I like. The reason being, anytime my parents spent money on me, whether it be for necessities, school, extracurriculars, whatever, they would throw it back in my face later on and make me feel guilty for asking for things or having money spent on me. So I eventually just stopped asking for things. 2 days ago, my dad asked me why I never ask for anything or want to buy anything ever, and I didn't even bother explaining because I didn't feel like being gaslit into believing that the things I experienced as a kid never actually happened. It sucks, but it's whatever. Honestly, empathy and understanding. Many people have heightened senses of empathy naturally, but oftentimes the people who really care for others have needed it themselves at some point. I'd like to list how I personally deal with this issue. It affects my attention and information retaining abilities, so I do these steps to help with that side. 1. Communication. Tell your friends. Get them to understand that sometimes experiences won't stick with you even if you paid attention and enjoyed it. 2. Write your activities and goals down. You won't be left wondering what you did yesterday and what you wanted to do earlier that day either. Being able to refer back to that information is a lifesaver, both literally and metaphorically. Helps me stay sane. 3. Review conversations and what you may be learning from them. This is a great time to use the second tip. You can write down how you felt or how you interpreted new information. I did that today, for example, since I'm trying to learn how to set up commissions and bank accounts and whatnot. Spending some extra time at the end of the day seriously helped me retain that information. 4. Progress is slow towards a normal memory. It's taken me like 10-ish years to be able to actually feel more like a functioning adult and less like a snail in my mental capacity. I couldn't hang on to any information besides what I needed to pass school tests and trauma. Regaining or repairing your memory takes a lot of time, much like the healing process takes a lot of time. 5. Most importantly, understand your own self. It's similar to depression, where it's very overwhelmingly discouraging and you can't put down an exact source of your issue. Accepting that makes moving forward a lot easier, since you'll spend less time beating yourself up over not having a tangible source of your issue, and more energy to try your best, since that's all you can do.
Somebody replied,
I think the saddest people always try their hardest to make other people happy, because they know what it's like to feel absolutely worthless and they don't want anybody else to feel like that. A quote by Robin Williams. Not trusting people. You could be friends for years, and think you're close, but in fact, you don't have the slightest idea what's going on in their lives. They could be staying up all night, being depressed, and tomorrow morning say hello with a smile on their faces. They simply don't trust people anymore, no matter what they do or don't do. The thing is, when you grow up with parents like that, you can only assume that the whole world is the same. Opening up, being vulnerable, or even just telling someone anything about you is used against you in abusive households, so they learn very quickly to never do any of that. It can take people years or decades after leaving their childhood home to realize that they were the exception and not the rule. The best thing you can do for him is listen when he does talk. It doesn't matter what he talks about, it could even be something unimportant like his favorite movie, but he doesn't have anyone listening to him and encouraging his own opinions. You can help him stretch those muscles subconsciously.
Somebody replied,
I have a friend who is like this. The only thing I know about his situation is that he has awful parents. That's all I know. I wish he could open up to me more. What are homies for? Holding people at a distance, very little facial expressions, regularly zoning out in a conversation, and being easily startled. These are all subtle signs of complex PTSD, which often stems from an abusive childhood or a prolonged traumatic experience they had no hope of escaping from. I'm always told, smile, I've never seen you do it before, and then I try to but I just can't, and I get too scared to explain that I struggle with smiling, and they just wait for me to smile. And I don't do anything because my body won't let me react in a reasonable way, and it's slightly less awkward than running away, but things still get really awkward and it's horrible. The worst part is that I want to smile for them, even if I don't have any other reason to, but I just don't. Children who grow up in dysfunctional homes where there is a lot of fighting and arguing, tend to hate confrontation when they are adults. They lack self-esteem and much more easily believe people who gaslight them. They don't easily stand up for themselves.
Somebody replied,
this can go either way. They end up screamers and yellers themselves, or they, as you said, avoid confrontation. I was never in the military, but I have multiple friends and family who served and were in combat. They don't complain about anything normal people do. Raining out and they have no umbrella? Smile on their face. Snowing? Same smile. Traffic? Same smile. The exception being my one cousin with PTSD who ended his own life a year ago. If you know anyone who's struggling, be there for them. Super independent because they learned not to rely on anyone. Having to parent themselves when young or raise their siblings might not have children but is really good with them. They have already gone through that chapter, which takes their own parenting opportunities away. I call it being the Swiss Army knife of humans. And yeah, it's messed up. It makes creating relationships with other people a ton more difficult because people either see you as a know-it-all and never needing help, or they feel inferior and threatened, so they keep you at arm's length. Their reaction to unexpected stress. If, for instance, you startle someone and their reaction is a typical, defensive or offensive stance, dropping to the ground, or otherwise very pronounced, followed by anger, that's a sign they have spent a lot of time in life-threatening situations. They don't go into survival mode, they live in survival mode. Also, if everyone around is panicking, but they are very calm and collected, that is an indication of living in a state of extreme prolonged stress. I did a fairly long stint in prison. My first main line was Pelican Bay up in Crescent City, CA. Rough place at the time. They had both halves of the yard open so we were walking big laps and just when we passed the softball field someone slammed the wooden equipment box which sounded like a gunshot. The dude I was walking with was already on the ground before I even startled a little. I was pretty fresh at that point, but I couldn't imagine at the time being that hyper-aware. This was back when they would literally shoot and then set the alarm if someone was getting booked or something. I eventually became extremely aware of my surroundings and the general mood of a room. I've been out about a decade and I am more relaxed, but the desire to have exits mapped, back to the wall, face the door, and stay out of the middle of groups will probably never leave. When startled I will often take a defensive stance, and still have a bit of a panic and feel out of place or want to get down on the ground when announcement systems start with a beep or a boop because it sounds like the alarms when things were going down. Get down. Get on the ground. And here come the cops and batons. Home Depot is the worst for this. Isolation. At home, work, vacation. People's advice becomes repetitively annoying but you're too worn down to even express it. There's a part that goes missing in some people that can't be replaced with any advice, therapy or other methods. A sort of numbness and feeling that you are on a different level or plane of existence that you know humans probably shouldn't veer into if it can be avoided. My sister's 6-year-old friend came for a visit. She was a foster kid placed with some church friends of ours. When she got to our house my dad told them they could grab some snacks from the pantry. Then every 20 or so minutes, for 4+ hours, she would go to our fridge or pantry, open the door, look like she was searching for something, close the door and go back and play. When she left, my dad found a stash of snacks under my sister's bed she had put there. Her foster parents had told my dad that could happen, so he wasn't surprised. But I remember kind of yelling at her to stop opening up the fridge and my dad taking me aside and explaining why she was doing this. Now this is the part that still makes my heart break and my blood boil. Since age 3 she had been living out of a car with her doped up mom and a brother who couldn't have been 2 years old. When they finally stayed long enough in one area for CPS to become aware of the situation, she was 5. Her mom would disappear for days and leave them in the car by themselves. This little girl, at age 6, had such a strong food scarcity trauma that her survival instinct was to check for food every 20 minutes at a stranger's house. Although this story does have a happy outcome. That girl and her brother were adopted by that foster family shortly after and have grown up relatively well. But I will never forget the survival instincts present in that little girl's eyes. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Do you recognize any of these signs in your friends or family? How about your own demeanor? Try clicking the recommended box for more content just like this, or subscribe to stay up to date with my daily videos.